Bring some research.
It smokes, it drinks, it philosophizes.
Just let me suck, please. Just a little suck on each one.
My mouth's bleeding, Bert! My mouth's bleeding!
Shall we talk now or wait?
When I saw the film, it was... Well, it was like a gut punch to me when I saw the film, to be honest.
You're welcome.
It summed up, thank you, it summed up, and don't take this the wrong way, it summed up everything that has been going on during the Trump administration, from racism, sexism, hatred, but first and foremost, because these are things that are easy to target, I'd say.
Yes.
For example, the last Borat film did that and failed miserably, according to in my book. But your film actually does something quite inventive, because it actually poses the question, well, what are you going to do about it? If there is a man like Cactus Jack, or Ronald as his real name is, who is this hate monger, who is this sexist, who is this racist? Well, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do about it? So my first question is, how did you come up with the idea for this project? Because I think you have been working on this project for 4 years, isn't it? Is it correct?
More than 4. We started production 4 years ago, but it was a very on and off process. We were making it in piecemeal by design, just a total shoestring, do-it-yourself film, you know. So we would shoot with our actor when we got a chance. It's true weekend warrior type stuff. And then Chris and I are screenwriters by trade. So we had a couple long breaks in there where we had optioned TV shows. And we actually had a deal with ZDFE in Germany, who backed a show of ours. We sold an original pitch to them. So we took a good year off working on all that. And so that took forever, but the genesis of the story, we came up with this 5 or 6 years ago, probably, before Trump even announced his candidacy. So we've said at times that we feel like we had diagnosed like a heart murmur, a national heart murmur that is now blown up into cardiac arrest, you know what I mean? But yeah, we've been at it for a long time, and this stuff's, you know, if you look at the Tea Party movement with Obama, I don't know how closely you follow our politics, but we feel like this second wave of racism, we're not second, but this new wave of overt racism came about as a reaction to Obama being elected. And it's just steamrolled into Trumpism, essentially got folded into Trumpism somehow. And here we are.
And it's ironic because, you know, historically, what was considered to be American and patriotic would be anti-Nazi, you know, when you go back to the World War II and people's grandparents had fought in World War II, et cetera. And now we have the people who claim to be the most patriotic are among the rallies you do see swastikas and, you know, or in the context of the U.S. Confederate flags and such, you know, you see the same thing we were fighting against now is starting to flourish again. And to me, I just find that hard to reconcile.
Right. They're enemies of an organization that calls itself anti-fascist. And they're fans of an authoritarian, yet
that was a very fascist regime.
It's all a mess, man. It's a mess over here. I mean, every country has its own problems. I know Germany does as well, and some of the same problems. And I won't say problems, but issues like immigration, etc. You know, and these movements, these far right nationalistic movements, this xenophobia comes to a head, jingoism, where we don't want to take in refugees until we take care of our own first. But it's like, what is our own? You know, is our own people born within these borders, or is our own,
or is it we're all
humankind? You know, that's how we tend to look at things. And so this film, essentially, to us, is truly a horror film. Chris and I write often what horrifies us, what scares us the most. So Jack, that's why we have these disclaimers up front. We want to make it apparent this guy horrifies us. You know, at the same time, he is a human being, and we're cognizant of the fact that most of this, maybe there's some evolutionary biology at play, but for the most part, it's all taught. It's programming. His parents were programmed themselves, and they in turn program him with this bad thought virus of a hate, you know? And we've had a couple of reviews that said we gave glimpses into the psychology of what made him the way he is, but lots of people get abused and have shitty abusive parents, and they don't turn into hate mongers, but it's subtle, but even when his mom is ranting at him in the scene where he snaps, she says racist shit in there. His dad obviously had that chest full of stuff, you know what I mean? So he wasn't just abused, he was taught racism. And, you know, the more someone recedes from society, the more angry they get, the more isolated they get, the more they start to become me versus the world and tribal, the more that stuff is going to take over versus any other programming he had, you know?
And this is one character study. It's not to say that every person who has, like, that every person who ends up in this condition got there because his parents did it. You know, there are other ways to arrive at that place, like others have pointed out. And it's true that sometimes it's someone seeking out brotherhood. You know, they're seeking out.
Right. Now, usually they had some sort of abuse or damage in childhood.
Like, why find brotherhood in this movement versus another movement?
They're looking for a family, and they find it in this gang of fucking motley skinheads or whatever. But
and
anyway, you asked us the question.
It's the norm.
He asked us when we started making this, and we go off. Yeah. But I don't know if you have other questions too, because you can just pull the string on our asses and we'll go forever.
I mean, these are interesting issues that you have. So I'm hesitating to actually interrupt you because most of what you're saying is an interesting insight because the film is relatively new. It has just come out. At least it seemed that way when it was presented to me.
Only like 15,000 people have even seen the trailer, man. I'm surprised it's on your radar. So that's awesome that you got your ear to the ground, apparently.
Yeah, actually, what you just said actually is something that has to do with the owner of the website that I wrote the review for. He actually knows that I am a horror aficionado, and whenever there is something horror that comes up, if it's a feature like what you did, or if it's a channel on Amazon Prime like Home of Horror, he actually tells me, you got to check this out.
Nice.
Something like this. And he made me aware, and he said, you know, try it out. Maybe it's something that you like. And I really like it. And I don't understand why so many people don't see it that way, because you have a incredibly low rating on IMDb, and I don't understand it.
I'm almost proud of it.
But I think that's the thing with IMDb, and when you are in independent horror, most of them have below
it's the politics of it. This is a political.
It's reactionary.
We didn't want to make this so political. It's not a political film. He's a political animal. It's a film about a character who's preoccupied with all this shit. But it's in essence a horror and a case study and a character study. And for us, again, we wanted to try and do a new thing in horror, the horror of rhetoric. Well, because we're in an area or an era where, at least in America, we hear a lot of talk about speech and language as violence, that if hate speech is a form of violence. Mm-hmm. So we're like, what if we examine hate speech as violence in a horror movie? And it's almost torture porn of language. You know what I mean? It's very repetitive by design. And that's been one of the critiques people have had, is that it's redundant, that he just keeps making these rants, though we would argue that it does ratchet up as it goes. Mm-hmm. But that redundancy is by design. He's
holding you prisoner.
You're hostage. It's oppressive. It's like racism itself. It's omnipresent and you can't escape it. You know what I mean? You're just stuck in the system. So that's how the movie operates.
And I think it's
as far as the rating, the IMDb rating, though, most of it is, if you look at all those ones, we have like almost 40 10, 9, and 8s on IMDb, and then 40 something ones. So it's super polarizing, which to us as artists is amazing. I mean, our heroes are guys like your own Werner Herzog. You know what I mean? We love art that polarizes, that is making you feel something. You know, you're having a reaction to it. If you give a 1 or a 5 or a 1 or a 10 versus a 3 or a 2.5.
3, yeah. I'll take a 1 over a 3 sometimes.
We're making you feel something, even if it's resentment and anger, but almost all of those are politically motivated. Every one of them says this is leftist propaganda, garbage, and it's almost sad to us that, first off, a human being would tie their political ideology to their identity, to the point where if I attack that ideology, they feel personally offended. Like if someone, we lean pretty left, pretty progressive humanist, you know, but if someone were to make a movie about a kid who gets radicalized into extremist leftist Antifa shit and
we've
then blows
talked
up
about
a
doing
building.
that.
Yeah, we've talked about making that movie and blows up a building or something. I'm not going to get offended and say this is right-wing propaganda, you know? So it's very odd to me that these people, it's like, are you seeing a bit of Jack in yourself? And that's why you're taking so much offense at it? Hopefully not, you know?
I think what you're just saying has something to do with, I think, the best scene in the film, or at least my favorite scene in the film, when Jack sort of, Ronald turns the tables on the documentary filmmaker and actually has this Super 8 camera, I think it is.
Yeah, he's got an old camera.
Yeah. And he turns the tables and asking him, well, what do you think about when I make all these remarks about women, when I make all these remarks about African Americans and so on and so forth? How do you feel about this? And my question would be, even though you've kind of answered it, what is more frightening for you as a horror filmmaker? The question that he poses, or the fact that the director is silent?
Both. I mean, one thing I'll say, in America, we have this Bill of Rights that we hold so sacred, and paramount among them is freedom of speech. A lot of people think, and including the framers, the Second Amendment, the next thing that was addressed, was the right to bear arms. But there is a drawback in that the right to bear arms sometimes stymies free speech. The documentarian character is terrified because Jack, this guy, he says, how many guns you got down there, man? It's like he doesn't feel safe enough to speak his mind. You know what I mean? So he's kind of being oppressed. So it speaks to, there is some complicity, we think, to the left, and he kind of represents the soft bigotry of the left versus the overt racism you would see more often on the right. You know what I mean? But there's also something to be said for he's just not comfortable or brave enough to speak in defense of everyone that Jack is attacking. You know what I mean?
Which, again, I and I'm not just saying this because you're from Germany, because this feeds into this a lot. We're seeing echoes of the same thing happening in the U.S., but that's what happened in Nazi Germany too, is that, one of the main problems is that the general public were sort of passive to this rising movement. And we feel like, with the Black Lives Matter movement here, for example, one of the things they say is we have to sort of police our own, that if we have an ability to talk to other people like ourselves and kind of help steer them back away from the edge, that it's a sort of responsibility to, you can't just stay silent, It's like, I forget the exact expression, but just, first they came for the Jews, and then they came for the gays, and then they came for the blacks, and I stayed silent for each step, and then they came for me. I think we need to all be conscious of that we have to, and I think the way we're doing this, exactly what we're doing right now, Jay and I have our own podcast too, Hard Out, check it out. But to just have discussions, like you were, I think this question, your impetus was, how do we steer people off that path? What can we do about it? I think the best thing you can do is just have conversations. Yeah, like there's a big debate right now about deplatforming. People being banned from Parler, being shut down, people being banned on Twitter, YouTube, etc. Not platforming people on your show. You shouldn't have this person on because their ideas are, toxic. But Jay and I are of the opinion that no, you need to engage as much as possible. That's really where it's at. That's where the battle's at. And to understand why people think the way they do, try and understand how they got there, and dismantle that, or just do this Socratic method. Just, why do you think this way? What brought you to this opinion? Right.
Like, the hope is that the film would spur conversation, and the hope then is that within those conversations, people would practice shit like the Socratic method to really try and get to the bottom of things, listen to someone, understand their point of view. It's so oppositional right now, and everything's so partisan and factional that people don't want to talk at all. I mean, we've had horrific comments already on this film from people saying, I wish he had gone on a rampage and shit at the end because they hate liberals so much, or whatever, you know what I mean? And we've actually had internal discussions with our team and producers who say we should delete that comment. But to us, it's like, no, leave the comment up there so that it can be engaged with and diffused. The more you delete and censor that shit, it's what happened to Jack. You get pushed into this corner and you become this cornered animal and then eventually lash out and explode, you know? Sunlight is the best antiseptic is a saying we use a lot when we talk about this film.
That's what you are just addressing is the same thing that happens with Twitter and Trump. They are censoring his Twitter account, right, which is exactly the wrong thing to do because you're actually giving the people more reason to believe in in this hate, which is exactly the wrong way we should be going.
Like, look at Parler. Parler exists because Facebook and YouTube and everything else were censoring. So it drove those people into their corners, which then it becomes just a series of echo chambers where, all right, we're the left and we pushed all these right assholes out. Now we have an echo chamber. No one disagrees with us. No one challenges us. No progress is made. Now they have their own echo chamber, which ironically, I never signed up for Parler, but I knew some people who went in there checking it out, and they don't use a like or a retweet. It was called an echo. You echo someone's comment. It's like echo chamber.
Wow, that's
like,
ironic.
The irony of it is hilarious that it was lost on them. But
which is exactly what you're doing in the film when they're trying to comment or ridicule what Cactus Jack is doing, the persona that he creates. When they're trying to ridicule him, make fun of him, insult him, which is exactly what the left has been trying to do with these sorts of comments by echoing what they're doing, which is exactly the wrong way you should be handling this.
I'm glad you divine all that from the film, that you see that. We appreciate it.
What I also find is interesting is your choice of main actor. I mean, I hope I pronounce everything correctly, but Michael
Gull, like a seagull.
Gull, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, Gull. Yes, I can't read my own handwriting here. Sorry. How did you
He's amazing.
Him to say these things? Because I can imagine that I just imagine myself, I'm not an actor, but if somebody directed would tell me, you have to say this about the blacks, you have to say this about women, this can be quite a challenge for an actor. So how did you get him to this level of intensity that he that he has for, like, what is it, 80 or 90 minutes?
Yeah, basically 80 minutes. If it was another 10 minutes, this movie could not use another 10 minutes. It's lean on purpose. Michael Gall, first off, we got to make the point abundantly clear, is nothing like this character. He's a fucking sweetheart of a man. It's just speaks to his presence and his ability that he could pull this off in such a manner that he is truly unsettling people, where they're like, if I see this dude on the street, I'm crossing and, I'm going the other way. It all started initially with the kind of conversations we're having right now, where we all got on the same page. So artistically, he was all in on the endeavor. That makes it easier when it comes time to say those horrible things, that we know he's on the team, he's all in, he's bought into what we're doing artistically, Now, when it came to doing it, the film, if you see it, you'll see it's walls of dialogue. There's 8-minute long screeds, essentially, that I would never expect this guy with a day job, weekend warrior, the way we're making this over the course of years, to memorize all this. So I teleprompted most of these hate speeches to him, and we would script them and not show him anything. He wouldn't prep him at all. He'd come in and say, all right, what horrible shit am I saying today? And we'd hit him with it then. So he didn't even have time to process it necessarily and, get turned off to certain things and question whether or not this was going too far. It was kind of like, all right, here it is. Let's do it. There are a few other tricks that you'll notice his teeth are really a mess. He had been in a car wreck and fucked his teeth all up, and they were just like slowly spreading and falling out and everything. That was part of the reason when we took that Robert Rodriguez approach to making a do-it-yourself film, and we looked around at all the assets. We looked at him as one, because Chris and I love movies that have real looking people, and we can't say anything worse than all the central casting beautiful men and women. You know, the Marvel universe where every scientist is a knockout blonde bombshell and shit. Like, can't stand it. So we like verisimilitude, and we're like, this looks like a dude who'd really be down in this basement and everything. But he has a side of his teeth that are worse. And he would early on kept saying, man, can you shoot the other side? Like, I'm really self-conscious of this side. And we're like, no, we're going to shoot you on the side you hate. We're going to make you uncomfortable and angsty. And you know what I mean? So we did what little things we could to try and put him in that mindset of just somebody who's just not comfortable in his own skin and happy. And, you know, that's a lot of what drives all of this hate shit and everything. It's fear for the most part. You know what I mean? And it's a preemptive attack against society.
The fact that it was shot in the way it was without a crew in this basement,
huge.
Very intimate. You know, to your question about him, you know, how did you get an actor to say these things and to inhabit the character in the way he did? You know, we didn't have a ton of lights and crew around and all this stuff, so it was really just boiled down to, you know, back when Jay and I were kids, you know, we would just like, you know, act out things and, you know, to access that just more intimate, kind of undisturbed ability to access something that you might not be able to if it was too big.
Unobserved is what it is.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
One of the things, there's been a lot of ballyhoo, like people are like, did you really make this movie with no crew and everything? Because it's been advertised as such. And essentially, yeah, the first day we tried to make a conventional movie, we'd raise like $4,000 in crowdfunding. It had a angel investor give us $5,000, built the set out, all that. First day we rented cameras, had crew, all that, $800 it cost us. We got some good footage that's in the movie, like that big tracking shot, that was from that day. But we just knew it was untenable. First, fiscally, like our budget's going to be burnt in no time with this shit. Secondly, I personally, Chris wasn't there for that day. I didn't like the process of taking 45 minutes between shots for elaborate light setups. So I'm an actor who's sitting there with a thumb up his ass, just trying to get mojo. And then you got all these people on set and they're wondering when lunch is. And you got to say quiet on set because these two PAs are talking and all that. We're just like, everyone get the fuck out. No offense, you all did great, but we just don't want to make a film that way. We want to make it intimately. And again, Chris was speaking of this. Once you get rid of the observers and there's no audience, you can really get someone to go a lot further, I think. That he doesn't even have this audience where even subconsciously he's more self-conscious about saying these awful things because these people are watching. And are they going to think I'm enjoying it too much? What if I'm too good and I look like a real racist, you know? When you get rid of all the observers and spectators, you can really just dig in and gain a trust, intimacy between the director and the actor, and I think get a more believable performance. I feel if we go to make a bigger film even, I'd want to run with a skeletal crew, you know? We lit this ourselves, shot it.
Sorry. Was what you just explained, was that also the reason why you decided to go for this, let's call it found footage format?
Yeah, initially it was not going to be found footage. It was just going to be kind of this natural born killers, artistic, like all those TV screens. Maybe we'd see flickers of his thoughts and shit in them, and just much more of an art horror movie. But we quickly pivoted. You know what? I'm going to shoot it myself. Fuck a crew. If we're going to shoot it ourselves, let's go found footage. That gives us kind of an out if it looks a little lo-fi or amateurish, you know. But let's make this documentarian character. And he fancies himself an artist, so he can still take artistic, cool shots, but maybe they don't work out perfectly technically. It doesn't look like Roger Deakins did it, but this guy at least knows how to frame a shot, etc. And once you came up with that character, the found footage thing, it became a whole different thing. Initially, it was purely going to be a talk radio taxi driver, this guy in a basement ranting and shit, but it got so much better by introducing that documentarian character. And I'll tell you one thing, it's crazy. We're screenwriters by trade, like I said, but we made this film with no script. So we would script his dialogue, but otherwise we knew, and we baked that into it the way we're making it, that we would have the freedom to pivot, to do these things. And I don't know if we would have made those drastic pivots, first off, to turn it found footage, introduce the documentarian character. But later, we had a version we sat on for about a year where he got killed, spoilers to everyone watching, at midpoint, along with the other murder. and Jack takes all his cameras and starts his show and everything. But then we sat on it forever, and it's like something wasn't feeling right. We're like, hey, I had the epiphany. What if he imprisons this guy and starts to indoctrinate him and make him his little project like the guy said he was? You know what I mean? If we had a script locked in, I don't know that we would have had those epiphanies or felt, I don't know if courageous enough is the word, but adventurous enough to go that far off script. You know what I mean? So the fact that we had a contained, controlled environment and we can control every aspect of production and we didn't have to schedule a bunch of people because we had sucked down the crew allowed us to make it without a script. And it was super liberating as screenwriters. I'll say that.
All right. I have one more question to go, which suits us fine because Zoom doesn't allow us unlimited time, unfortunately. But I had a look at your homepage, and there are numerous projects. You mentioned your work as a screenwriter just a moment ago. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us something about other projects that you're working on? Because I can see you're not just screenwriters and directors; you're also authors.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know if you want to speak to these Reapers books. That was his a mutual brainchild, but he's the point man on that. We're kind of point man on different projects, you know.
Yeah, we have a series of fantasy novels called Reapers. It's if you imagine a Zero Dark 30 SEAL Team 6 type of operation within a Game of Thrones type of universe, where you're following these geopolitical regime changing sort of machinations of a society in a sort of Tolkien-like universe, you know. But yeah, we are, our manager described it pretty well, said we're our own engine when it comes to conceiving of projects and ideas. We have a long list of concepts that we haven't executed.
We have a database of like 170 ideas, but stuff on our site's just what's been in the works actually produced to some degree.
Mm-hmm. That's never a problem for us. Ideas are constantly coming. The fact that we're this two-headed monster too helps, you know, that. Oh, okay, great. So we I mean, and all the forms of storytelling I'm enamored with. You know, we constantly debate what each project, the best form it could take, where you should start with. You know, so prose has its own art form, and I'm enamored with it. You know, to just like an analogy I'll use is deep sea diving. You just go really, really deep, and it's telepathy between you and the reader when you write prose. But some stories that we tell are just better served by being filmic, you know, by being visual. It just all depends on the project.
Yeah, we consider ourselves storytellers first, and then it's picking the right medium to tell the right story. And sometimes it's a Russian doll thing where it's like, let's start it as sometimes even a poem as far as we'll outline, because we got sick of outlining shit in Hollywood. When you sell a project or whatever, you have to then turn in outlines and outlines and outlines before you get sent to script. And that process is so uncreative and by committee that we started to even like, how can we make this artistically rewarding, the outline process? Well, what if we did outlines as poems? So you're basically hitting thematic beats and tonal impressions and everything. And then from there, it's like, all right, a short story. A short story to us equates to a movie. A novel, I know a lot of novels have been adapted to film, movies, but now that we're in the golden age of television, at least, I think people see that novels, for the most part, depending on how much time is compressed in the novel and what's happening. Elmore Leonard novel makes a great movie, for example, maybe more than a TV show, but a lot of more epic, big novels would go to TV. But short stories to us feel like movies, you know, and a lot of great short stories. Shawshank Redemption was, you know, short novella essentially, but some of the best movies ever come from short stories because it's got a beginning, middle, end, kind of a punchline, structured like a joke, you know. So we'll write shit as a short story, and then from there, it's like, well, maybe this short story would make a really good movie, so we'll take it to the next level and adapt that way. But ultimately, multi-hyphenates, podcasters, like we said, Chris is a musician. You can see everything back there. We're always just telling stories in every kind of medium. I don't see why you should pigeonhole yourself as a storyteller to this one medium. It's very odd. It's like, this is like dating, being a man about town and flirting with all these different mediums versus marrying one, you know?
And with the film, it's ambitious. You know, you have to really be committed to devoting, you know, a certain amount of time. I mean, with Jack, it was many years, but that was partly because by design, we thought, let's make something that we have with our, you know, current real lives, day jobs and family and that sort of thing, those responsibilities, something that you can shoot somewhat at your leisure. You can pivot, you can be agile. Other productions, obviously, you know, when you think about like Kubrick productions and, you know, Dunkirk, Star Wars, anything like that's that ambitious, that's a whole different animal. That's, of course, requires a much bigger backing and group of people to pull off. But with what we're working with, we have such a wealth of ideas and things that we can't wait to get to the next project, that we thought there's a million stories you can tell in a minimal way. And it's sort of fun to play with that obstruction, to find a way to what's the best way to distill this into its purest form that doesn't require, that minimizes all the headaches and the logistics and all these sorts of things, you know, that really
collaboration and gatekeeping included. Like in Hollywood, a lot of times you got to run an idea by your representatives and see if the market would be amenable to it, even though it's ridiculous because it's going to take you months to write it. The market will have shifted by then and everything. But you know, with pros, with some of these other things, we just do what the hell we want, when we want. And that's how we're trying to approach filmmaking as well. We completely made this outside of the system, almost as a fuck you to Hollywood and the way films are made. You know what I mean? First off, content-wise, nothing this hardcore would ever get through the Hollywood system. You know, once we knew there weren't millions of dollars going to be at stake and you wouldn't have all this risk aversion and oversight and everything. Part of the reason the movie is so offensive and hardcore is we wanted to, for once, with that liberty, to make a completely unvarnished portrayal of what hate is. Every movie, you know, you get movies like A Time to Kill, Mississippi Burning, whatever, they'll be punctuated with this stuff, but it's always still tastefully done. And there's nothing tasteful about racism. So why do we have all these tasteful depictions of hatred? You know what I mean? Let's make a distasteful one that feels as ugly as it is. So again, it just speaks to how we want to kind of operate outside of the system to have that artistic freedom. But then the problem is getting eyes on it. We're amazed you even know this shit exists, to be honest. You know, we're trying to get a grassroots thing going, and
like a word of mouth. Like in your own case, you said that your associate, you know, recommended it to you. That's what we're hoping happens with this. Like, especially, it's a whole new, you know, a brave new world now when it comes to release, that the access a creator has to their audience, the direct manner in which you can release content now, that you don't have to go through the distribution system from before. COVID only accelerated that. And we're hoping we can prove out a paradigm where Jay and I talk about the creative middle class, where you don't have to become, you know, filthy rich from this, but if you can just sustain it as a, you know, just keep food on the table and, you know, a secure future, et cetera, by creating content and delivering it direct. But that is the challenge, just getting it in front of people, getting people to be interested enough, you know,
building that audience. You know, it's like, we want to find our audience with this project, which might be a fucking wacky project to find your audience on. Who knows what kind of sycophants we'll have and people that we don't agree with. But again, it's fine. Yeah, it's a stake in the ground. It's a noisy racket of a film, and we're hoping we can use it to get people just interested in what we have to say as creators and artists. And we hope to inspire and empower people. A lot of the reason we made this film this way, too, was to prove that you truly have the power in your pocket to make a film. We know a lot of people who are like, I want to make a movie, but I need an editor, and I need this, and I need that. And it's like, man, you can go. It's like you said in Goodwill Hunting, you dropped $150,000 on education. You could have gotten $150 in late charges at the public library. We have YouTube tutorials that'll teach you every aspect of Final Cut. It'll teach you how to cut in Premiere, whatever. You could see how to use cameras, how to frame shots. I mean, YouTube is out there as a resource. You can get a masterclass. Werner Herzog's masterclass, our manager actually sent us for Christmas one year. All these things, if you're an autodidactic person, you can learn to do these things on your own. And take as much collaboration as possible out of the process so that you can just tell your own story on your own terms at your own leisure, like Chris said, to a degree, and even self-distribute it to your own audience eventually, you know? That's the goal, at least. We'll see how it goes.
Well, thank you very much for the talk. Thanks very much for the interview. Thanks for this very nice conversation, which actually didn't feel like an interview, which actually felt more like, I see that you have a podcast, but actually feels like recording a podcast, very much so, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of what we do. We try and just have conversations and real, genuine talks versus, you know, sound bites and talking points. Maybe that just speaks to our conversational style, that we would take your questions and run with them in multiple directions, but we appreciate it. Everyone should check out our podcast. It's called Hard Out. We have had it on its own channel on YouTube, but we're porting everything over just to put it under Them Thorntons, all of it. So if you look up Them Thorntons on YouTube, you'll find our Cactus Jack trailer, which could send you to the movie. You'll find audio plays. That's another thing. Chris and I, another
huge one. Yes.
Yeah. So some of the short stories will adapt to audio plays, and some will just write for audio play, you know? So we only have one up there now, but it's a fucking banger. Check it out. Pardon my language. I don't know if you bleep those or not. I should have asked first, but
well, it's going to be written down, the interview, so
perfect.
I'm going to edit, not censor, edit a couple of these things. So don't worry about it.
All right, man. Don't misquote us. We'll come for you.
Well, it's a
don't
long
piss
way
off the guys
from
who made
Milwaukee to
Cactus
Cologne.
Jack. What's that?
It's a long way from Milwaukee to Cologne, especially in COVID times.
How long was this? Was this an hour? Do you mind if we released this interview, or would you prefer only to be in print? Because I think we have been recording, it looks like.
That's what you hosted,
Zoom
right? So
auto-recording.
it's your recording, right? Yeah.
Actually, I don't mind it. I'm gonna have to ask my associate if he doesn't mind, but I don't see the problem because it's because his is a German homepage. Yours would be released in the States, I presume. So I don't see it as much of a problem. I mean,
able to help you get a little more readership and audience too. Do you want to say what publication you're working for? If we were to put this out,
this specifically is for a German website, which has a lovely German name called filmrezensionen.de, which translate to filmreviews.de. I also write for a magazine called Deadline, which is also specializes in genre, horror, thriller. As the editor always says, everything that has blood in it. And I also write for an English publication called Asian Movie Pulse, which, as the name suggests, only specializes in Asian-related content.
Interesting.
All right. Well, let us know, man. We'll put this interview out on our podcast as well. So,
and you're welcome to come on as a guest anytime. We have a segment we call My Favorite Movie. I don't know if you have an actual favorite movie, but we like to have guests on and just at least use that as a springboard into conversation.
It's only an hour, so
I've actually been tempted to do this, but the thing is, with a collection like mine, it's very, very hard to pinpoint one.
Yeah, one thing we do, it's a running joke
too.
of the show that we can't pick a favorite. So it's an absurd ask of people to pick a favorite. Favorites in general are kind of silly, but it's a lot of times somebody will send us like their top 5 or even 10, and we'll say, oh, 10 people have already, or 5 people have talked about this one already. Let's do this one. So if you want to come on, we can help you narrow down a selection.
Yeah. Or as a more general conversation, that's fine.
Yeah,
too.
man, just come on whenever. We love talking to cool people, and you seem super cool.
I'll do my very best.
All right, man. Well, stay in touch. Let us know about sharing this on our end, the video capture, and appreciate you getting the film, reviewing it the way you did, and feel free to spread the word because this is all grassroots.
And in any case, good luck with your future endeavors.
All right. Thank you much, sir.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take it easy.
All right, take care.
You're alone, right?
Yeah. Is it cool if I start filming now?
No, wait till we get inside. Why are you here?
I just thought it was really interesting, that someone hasn't left their basement in 6 months, not even to use the bathroom. Is that true?
Why would I want to go out there? I got everything I need right here.
That's what's wrong with most people. They're weak-willed pussies and parasites who buy into that whole it takes a village bullshit. You know how many aliases I've used calling into radio shows?
I've had it up to my goddamn gills with the systematic feminization of this country.
Of course we want you. Get your own damn show if you think you got that much to say.
You live in your mom's basement.
Kid! No! Fuck you! What's so special about my loser son?
You really do hate your own mother.
She's a woman. Why wouldn't I?
You know, there's some disconnect there, and if I can find it, what is hate? Where does it come from? Where does it go?
You want to know what gender you are? Reach down the front of your fucking pants and shoot fucking kite. Black Lives Matter. Do you call horses slaves? Liberal fucktard. Enough with the parades and the rainbow flags.
Dude, this guy's... it's like pure hate, man.
I want to see something really fucking cool.
This guy is a fucking animal. He's got himself on a leash. He's itching to get off that fucking leash. And he's gonna fucking kill some people.
What a fucking show.
Stop!
What do we hear?
Look at me! Look at me!
We're gonna help you show them the light. We're gonna change the world. This is Cactus Jack coming to you live from a studio audience.
To the man who calls himself Cactus Jack, we have watched as you have rocketed to infamy.
And you wonder why these cornered animals lash out. Pick a fucking side.
And now, we have watched as you have called for literal blood.
I know you're out there listening. It's buzzing in your ears, burrowing into your brain. Do it.
Jack, you're gonna love this.
I pulled that trigger on that motherfucker's head.
Your VPN will not shield you. The darknet will not hide you. You and your kind are finished.
You think I'm scared of you?
Come and fucking get me!
Might I be your neighbor? Neighbor?